Okay, so this is the second in a series of these videos, and we're actually going to have a look at the text now. Hopefully you've already watched the introduction video, so you know a little bit about what this text is about. As mentioned last time, it's a letter written by Pliny the Younger to his friend Calvisius. So it starts in the standard fashion with this little line here, just introducing who it's from and who it's to. So there are a couple of abbreviations in here. One is C. C rather confusingly refers to Gaius, or stands for Gaius rather, which is a bit of an annoyance. It can stand for Caius as well, but Gaius is the usual reading of it. And then there's the S at the end, which I've written a little note on. It stands for Salutem Dicit, so which means something like, sends greetings, literally sort of says greetings to his friend. So the short introduction here is Gaius Plinius Calvisio suo salutem dicit. Gaius Plinius greets his Calvisius. Suo does just mean his, but you might want to translate it as something like his dear Calvisius. So that's just the little address, sort of dear Calvisius. He starts the letter in a slightly unusual way by making giving an order. He says asem para. Para, you will know, comes from the verb paro, which means to prepare, and this is the imperative form of it. Asem is an as, which is the smallest value of Roman coin. So I've suggested maybe that you translate it as a penny. So the phrase means prepare a penny. Pliny's styling himself as a storyteller, so it's an unusual start to the letter. He's imagining himself as a kind of bard, and expecting payment for the story that he's about to tell Calvisius. So prepare a penny. Et accipe auream fabulam, and again a second imperative, accipe, and receive auream fabulam, a golden story. Golden obviously referring to the quality of it rather than anything else. Fabulas imo gives a little bit more clarification. He changes his mind. It's not just one story, it's fabulas, it's stories. Imo is a great word, which gives a sort of contrast, and you can be slightly dramatic with it, nay, stories. I think I've suggested in the vocabulary underneath. Don't forget that actually accompanying the text there is vocabulary underneath, and there are notes as well. Anything which is in the notes is also shown in bold in the text, I hope. Anyway, so prepare a penny and receive a golden story, nay, stories. And then he just gives you a little insight into his thought process. Nam, for, so there's a little explanation coming here. Noa is kind of the starting point here. New. There's no noun agreeing with that. Noa is feminine though, so I'm going to assume that he means the fabula, which is mentioned in the previous phase. For the new story, understood, admonuit, reminds me, and then priorum. This is in the genitive, and again it's got no noun agreeing with it, but literally it means sort of the earlier ones, so again you have to imply the stories with it. So you put the whole phrase together and you get something like prepare a penny and receive a golden story, nay, stories, for the new one reminds me of earlier ones. And then he doesn't quite stop there. He's talking about the number of stories. Nec is a word you will know, meaning and not. And then refert, usually refero means to bring back in its most basic form, or to report something, but here it has a special meaning of to matter. So, and it doesn't matter a qua from which, i.e. from which story, incipiam I begin. Incipiam is in the subjunctive. It's a present subjunctive, which is a form that you don't actually meet at GCSE, but it's in the subjunctive because it's part of his indirect question. Which story should I begin from? It doesn't matter which story I begin from. And then he introduces one of the characters in the story. he doesn't mention Regulus first. He mentions this woman instead. He says Warania gravite jacebat. Verania was lying, and then this word graviter, literally heavily. But in this context, it means that she was ill, she was sick. So that whole phrase I would translate as Verania was lying ill. And then Regulus gets a mention. He says ad hanc Regulus venit. Hanc, like the adjectives which he had in the previous sentence, is not actually agreeing with anything directly in the phrase, but it is in the feminine. So I'm going to assume that he's talking about Verania again. So ad hanc, to this woman. Regulus is the subject. Regulus venit, that's quite straightforward. Regulus came. So Regulus came to this woman, i.e. he came and paid her a visit. And then he gives a little bit of thought about his feeling on this. Primum impudentiam hominis. Primum, again, is a word you should know. First of all, at first, impudentiam. This is unusual. You'll notice that word's in the accusative, impudentiam. And it's in the accusative because he's exclaiming, he's shouting about something. And the Romans use the accusative in order to do that. So, first of all, the impudence, and then hominis is in the genitive, of the man. So the first thing that Pliny wants us to know about this is that he feels that Regulus visiting Verania is impudent, is something he shouldn't have done. Although he's not explained why. He will do in a moment. Then he links to that with the relative clause. At first, the impudence of the man, qui venerit, who came. Venerit is perfect subjunctive. Again, it's not a form that you see at GCSE. It doesn't matter too much as long as you understand that it's in the perfect tense. Who came, and then ad igram. Again, like Hank and like Noah in the first sentence, there's no noun agreeing with this adjective. Iger means somebody who means sick or ill, but because it's in the feminine, again, we're going to assume that Verania is the person who he's talking about. So first of all, the impudence rather, of the man who came to the sick woman. Maybe of this man. First of all, the impudence of this man who came to the sick woman. And then there's another relative clause hanging off of this, but this time in the genitive. The sick woman, cuius, of whom or whose. You're then going to get a description of Regulus afterwards. He's described as inimikissimus. Inimicus, as you'll know, is an enemy, so this is the superlative form of that. Most hostile. The key word here really makes it all hang together is marito. To the husband. So if you put the whole thing together, you end up with to the husband of whom. Inimikissimus, most hostile. That feels kind of incomplete, so we're going to look for a verb, but there's a verb right at the very end here which actually applies to this clause as well as the one that it actually sits with. So at first, the impudence of the man who came to the sick woman, to whose husband, fuerat is in the pluperfect tense, he had been most hostile. Then you get this second clause again describing Regulus. In this phrase, he's described as invisissimus, which again I've given in the vocabulary as hated or detested. So invisissimus fuerat, he had been most hated. Ipsi here comes from ipse, or in this case ipsa, because again I think it refers to Verania. So to she herself, invisissimus fuerat, he had been most hated. So if you put that all together, you end up with something like, first of all, the impudence of the man who came to the sick woman, to whose husband, he had been most hostile, and to she herself, he had been most hated. He came to visit Verania, even though he had been an enemy of her husband, and she herself, Verania, had hated Regulus. So he's turning up where he's not wanted. Esto is an unusual form. It's from the verb to be. It's a kind of third person imperative, and it means something like "let it be," so be it. It's not a form you're likely to have seen before, and you won't see it very commonly, but there it is. So be it. Si venit tantum. Si venit, if he had come, or if he came, literally. Tantum is a word you will have seen before in the form of tantus, but here it's being used as an adverb, so it shifts the meaning ever so slightly, and it means something like only. So again, the whole phrase esto si venit tantum, so be it if he had only come. What he means here is, not a problem, I suppose, if all he'd done was to turn up and meet with Verania. But the implication of this phrase is that that's not all he did, that there was more that he did as well. And the explanation for that comes immediately afterwards. At ille etiam proximus toro sedit. At ille, at is a word for but. Obviously you'll see sed more commonly, but at in this instance means but. At ille, but he, etiam, even. So, but he even, what is it that he did? He sedit. He sat toro on the bed. And he didn't just sit on the bed, he sat proximus on the bed. He sat literally very near or nearest, so maybe next to her. So again, just going back and recapping that, at ille etiam proximus toro sedit, but he even sat next to her on the bed. So you get this image of Regulus demonstrating a kind of bedside manner and cozying up to the very ill Verania in her final hours. And then he does something rather unusual. The verb at the end of this sentence, interrogavit, quo die qua hora nata esset interrogavit, obviously gives us the English word interrogate, but it's not quite as strong as that here. It just means to inquire or to ask something. So interrogavit, he asked, quo die, on what day, qua hora, on what hour, nata esset. Again, esset is in the subjunctive because this is an indirect question. What Regulus actually said to Verania was, what day were you born on? At what time were you born? So this is an indirect question because it's being reported. He asked her on what day and at what time, or literally on what hour she was born. This might seem a slightly odd thing to ask, but it's going to lead into a discussion about fortune telling. The Romans believed that the date and time of your birth could dictate the span of your life. So he's going to ask her for these details and then go away and have her fortune done to see whether or not she's going to survive. Presumably, she's hoping that she will, and he, as a bit of a con man, is going to play on that and maybe try and give her some positive news. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, and I hope that gives you enough to produce something of your own translation. In the booklet that I've made, the sentences are broken down on the opposite page with space for you to write your own translation. So I suggest what you do is to try and print the booklet off, if at all possible, and write a translation on the opposite page. If you can't do that, then just try and write one up somewhere safe, in an exercise book. Have a space in an exercise book somewhere where you can do it, and we'll try and organise this properly when we all get back. Do message me if there are any questions. See how you get on. Thanks very much.